Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, where I get a chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. This broadcast is sponsored by Reveal-Brainspace, the industry's leading AI eDiscovery platform. Don't forget to subscribe to watch me, George Socha, weekly with leaders in eDiscovery. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. I am George Socha. I head up brand awareness at Reveal. On each episode of eDiscovery Leaders Live, I get the chance to chat with luminaries in eDiscovery and related areas. Past episodes are available on the Reveal website. Go to revealdata.com, select resources, then select eDiscovery Leaders Live. Our guest today is Emma Young. Emma is head of discovery or consulting delivery at Sky Discovery. Let's see if I can keep that straight. Emma, welcome.
Hi, George. What a mouthful. Welcome.
I know. And I meant to mention as well, you are based in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I'm based in Brisbane, Australia, but actually coming to you live from London. So this isn't a virtual background. This is my hotel room.
There we go. From all over the world, all over.
Wherever you find me.
Yeah. So do you work part-time in Australia, part-time in the UK?
Yeah. So Sky Discovery's team is mainly in Australia, but we've got a growing team in London. And I spent the middle half of my career working and living in London. So I pop over from time to time and help our team make connections. So I do travel a bit.
Well, let's roll back a little bit then and start at the beginning. How is it you got involved in eDiscovery in the first place?
Like everybody, it's an interesting question. The truth is, I actually wanted to be a lawyer when I was young, but straight out of high school, I went to university, and I'll be honest, I was sick of studying. And at the time I did work as a manager at McDonald's. And they actually offered me, instead of leaving McDonald's to go to university, they offered me a good amount of money to manage a store in Australia. And I thought that would be a good gap year. So it was supposed to be a year. It resulted in me not going back to university and doing that for a few years. But then I realized I didn't want to do that for the rest of my life. And then instead of jumping straight into 6 years of law school and training contracts, I decided to get a job in a law firm instead. So my very first job in law was as a legal secretary, working for a partner in insolvency. And he had the foresight one day to, he was working on a matter that had a disclosure element. And he said to me, "Look, Emma, you're smart. Here's a bundle of documents. Can you shuffle them in chronological order, draft an index?" I did that, did a good job of it, because that's how eDiscovery was done then. There was no E, it was just taking the paper, putting it into a nice order and writing a list of documents. And then not long after that, I started doing a bit of paralegal work, sort of basic claim forms, statements of claim for him. Sort of the rest is history. I ended up working at a Magic Circle firm, Allen's Linklaters in Australia, where I managed a team of paralegals and worked sort of more robustly in eDiscovery when the electronic started to turn up in the paper documents, the CDs and the DVDs that we stopped printing out and started handling as electronic discovery. So that's sort of how I fell into eDiscovery, like everybody does.
Some of us stopped printing out. I was a bit of a digression. Last night I was at a second retirement party for a former colleague of mine who spent nearly 30 years as a state court trial judge here in Minnesota.
Wow.
Also, there were several other lawyers who had been at the same firm that she and I were at. One of them, a partner at a firm that he helped found 30 years ago, next month.
Wow, yeah.
He was telling me about how he still has the documents he cares about printed out, put in Redwells, or put in folders, put in Redwells, so that he can manage and organize them that way. He said, "Yeah, I don't like it's like looking at documents on a screen, I just can't get my head around that.
Oh, that's it. And like, there's something to do with that generation and tangibility and getting out a highlighter or sticky notes. I won't talk to you about the war stories of boxes of documents that lawyers would tag up with. Like, we used to have red and green post-it notes, red meaning, privileged, and green meaning relevant, not privileged. And they would tag them up, and that's how we would manage our disclosure. But yeah, the digression. I think these days, try to take someone's inbox and print that out, you'd be hiring a warehouse to contain the paper.
Yeah, and he is not, I mean, at his level in the law firm,
yeah,
he is not looking at everything. He's just looking at a select set of materials that work their way up to him.
I love it. Well, that's fair enough.
So you got into eDiscovery. How did you end up at Sky Discovery?
Oh, long story. So I did the first half of my career in Australia. Like I said, I worked at a large law firm. It was a really excellent role. I was sort of traveling around the country, working on very large cases, managing very large teams. But I was still pretty young, and the opportunity arose to move to the UK. So I took that opportunity, but staying in my comfort zone, I wanted to stay working in a law firm. So I had a job with Latham & Watkins, a large international law firm. So I transferred from Australia over to London in the law firm space. So that was my sort of first year in London. It was doing much of the same, just in a different country. I was very frightened. I think that I wouldn't know very much, that the work would be quite different. But actually, I think eDiscovery is sort of eDiscovery when it comes down to the core of what it is. It's large volumes of documents, searches. The databases might be different. The legal issues or the legal process might be different, but it was pretty easy to get up to speed. And then I spent 12 years of my career here in London before 2 years ago moving back to Australia.
And now bouncing back and forth between Brisbane and London, I gather.
I quite like that. Yeah, I quite like keeping my London connections, and our team here is growing. So it's quite nice to sort of spend some time together and connect the two parts of the company. It's quite good.
One of the things you've done along the way as well, I understand, is to found or help found the ACEDS ANZ chapter.
Yeah. So I'm the president of the ACEDS, Association of Certified eDiscovery Specialists, New Zealand and Australian chapter. NZ is actually what we call it. Locals get the abbreviation. So somewhere in my career when I was working in the UK, I gained a lot of software accreditations, but I hadn't quite. Also, stepping back, I never actually got that law degree. I never practiced as a lawyer. I just became too busy working, and I wanted something sort of to define my experience. I'd maybe been in the industry for about definitely over 10 years by that stage. And so I found ACEDS when it was a lot smaller at its inception. I went to a conference in Florida, did some study, and I got many years ago now the certification. I just really liked the fact that there was an organization focused on the discovery element and the professionals who do that. And so when I moved to Australia, there was no chapter of ACEDS. So I got together with some counterparts, and we founded that chapter a little over a year ago now. So that's doing really well, and we're really happy to share webinars, stories, local content. So yeah, I'm quite enjoying that.
Let's step back a little bit. This suggests you were active in the London chapter.
Yeah, so the London chapter, I don't know how active I was. I definitely wasn't a president, but I'd go to events. And what I just really liked, I remember quite often, actually Cheryl Moretti, of all people, who was eDiscovery at Gibson Dunn at the time. I think she's still at Gibson Dunn. She had a law firm space. And what I really enjoyed was the fact that they'd opened the boardroom. People from all over London in the eDiscovery arena were just invited to breakfast sessions or lunches and learns, or, it was a really great open community of eDiscovery professionals who can come and share and learn about, topics that affected us all. Just data protection in the UK was a big topic, cybersecurity, whatever was going. And it was just a really great community to be a part of. And I wanted to take that to Australia. The chapters was, going for a lot more years in the UK. So, we're in early days, but yeah, it's really nice. I'm hoping to collaborate with the UK chapter on an upcoming webinar about international arbitration. So something that sort of crosses both borders. So, we're hoping to work together on a few things if possible.
So before we jump halfway around the world to Australia and New Zealand, staying on London a little bit longer, there's the London chapter of ACEDS. Are there other similar organizations or opportunities for folks to get together in the e-discovery space in London?
There's smaller things. So there's the Women in E-Discovery group, which invites men to summer parties and whatnot. So I went to a lot of their things. There's the ILTA groups. So some friends and ex-colleagues of mine have started an e-discovery breakfast club. That's sort of up and coming. But I think ACEDS, from an e-discovery professional's perspective, aside from the Women in E-Discovery, is sort of the biggest community of e-discovery professionals, aside from sort of the software-related events. But this is meant to be really more technology agnostic, something that anyone, regardless of where they work, can come to and learn and get together.
Okay, so let's now spin the globe, in your head at least, and whisk you out of London and back to Brisbane.
Yes.
You've decided to try to replicate there what you were experiencing in London with a new chapter.
Yeah.
What was that process like?
Well, we were really well supported by Mike, particularly I call it him at HQ, headquarters. So Mike Q, I'd known Mike from many years back, my earlier involvement with ACEDS in the UK. I think I met him in person at a conference in Florida once, an ACEDS conference. And he was really supportive of the idea. I think prior to me returning to Australia, a few folk had attempted to sort of start up the community, but hadn't really got the traction. It does require a little bit of work. Just someone to drive the momentum. There's ACEDS chapters all over the world, as probably people who are watching this know. One of the key things about Australia is that it is also state-based, a little like the US. So there is a federal court system, but the states are dispersed. There's people sort of in Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, there's Perth, Adelaide are sort of the centre hubs for professionals. So we sort of had to make a decision. Do we do this just Australia? How are we going to do the in-person meet and greets? And actually one of my friends and the vice president of the ACEDS chapter, Reno, lives in New Zealand. So because we were just establishing this group, we decided to combine the two countries from a regional perspective. There's similarities and differences between sort of how we work, but from an e-discovery perspective, that made sense. But yeah, so what we've done in the first year is we've sort of rolled out webinars every other month. We're focusing around educational content. We had a really great networking lunch in Sydney back end of last year. Oh, maybe was that? And I think it was the back end of last year. We try to make a presence at some of the software conferences. But yeah, really, we're just a welcoming free space for people who want to join our LinkedIn page. We're still figuring things out. We want to hear from our community about topics that are of interest. But yeah, that's what we're trying to do. And I think what's important about the ACEDS ANZ chapter is that we bring regional specific content. And I will be honest, a lot of the e-discovery content comes out of America or the UK. And for Australians, that time zone is problematic. And there is just a difference between, seeing something live or being able to participate in a live chat or ask questions at a webinar than watching it back on video. I think, the people in our region have really appreciated something on their time zone designed for them. We always choose experts, whether we have some international experts or people who've worked in different jurisdictions. It's really helpful to have people who've practiced and work and live in Australia talk about their experiences, the differences. So yeah, that's what I've sort of been trying to put together, and it's going pretty well so far, I think.
An effort like this does not happen on its own, correct, as you mentioned earlier. What sort of work has been involved in putting this together? So
we have a board, so our chapter board. So we've got Reno and John over in New Zealand. Then I've got in Australia, it's myself, Gina, Pavan, and Enzo. Enzo is from Reveal as well. So we've got roles essentially, and so we look to our community and sort of ask, for advice. What do you want to hear? I look for speakers on panels. We meet monthly as a board and talk about what topics. I think Kat Casey from Reveal is actually going to be speaking in July. For example, there are some sort of topics and there's content that is easier to create. For example, I'm on the EDRM MIH project, and we, that project, there's some presentations and information that has been delivered in US time zone, or trying to be a bit sort of friendly to Australian time zones, but they were very early or very late. So I asked them to just do one in an Australian time zone. So there's a lot of volunteers out there that have either created content or want to talk about topics just with an Australian spin. So yeah, partnerships with software vendors, partnerships with e-discovery vendors. We have sponsors. Essentially, we're just looking for a community of people to help and support us. Just get the word out there and educate our people. Just provide a resource to the community, I suppose.
Yeah, some organizations are more closed, others are more inclusive.
Oh yeah.
Where does this group fit on that spectrum?
Don't get me started, George. No, so we're an open community. So there's no restriction on membership. There's a fee for membership, which comes with discounts and whatnot. But we also have a LinkedIn group pages. The benefit of membership is that people can watch a lot of our webinars sort of on demand and playback. So if they haven't been able to join live, they can watch them back. But also sometimes you watch a webinar and you think, oh, that was great, but then it becomes more important or useful because something's come up in a case, or a couple of months later. So there's a few benefits to membership as well as discounts, and we have a members only event once a year. So membership is definitely something that we'd like to encourage. There's the certification benefits as well of being part of ACEDS, but you can join our LinkedIn page. We share this stuff just with the entire community, and our webinars, in terms of the live content, they're open to anyone. The reason I laughed when you said that, and this, George, is that it's one of my bugbears about sort of being an e-discovery professional. And I think the inclusivity for me is the most important thing. So, we've talked before, George, about my experiences. I worked the first half of my career in law firms. And for me, you get treated in a certain way. You're invited to, come to breakfasts, sessions, webinar. You're coveted. You are. You want to go to a large industry conference. Your ticket is $150. It's very easy to go get educated, see what your peers are talking about, get technical training and knowledge on the latest. And then somewhere in my career, I moved to the vendor side of things. And stepping back one piece about the inclusivity, for me, I was poached out of Latham Watkins by a local vendor here in London. It was an attractive offer. It was something that I hadn't done before. So I call a vendor like an e-discovery service provider, so a company that hosted databases and provided support to direct to law firms. So I did that, and it was an exceptional move in my career because it gave me an insight and an understanding of such a diverse range of experience, knowledge, methods, case types. And a lot of the very large firms that I worked for, we were doing very large defendant type work. There's a strategy around defense in e-discovery. There's a different approach to a large organization defending a case than the strategy around disclosure for a claimant or a small organization or a class action. I know it's all disclosure, I know it's all the law, but there's strategy differences, there's collection differences. You've got to talk about commercials and timing. And so that moving on to the vendor side of things gave me such great insight. But my role and the role of my team in my organization is to be that in-house e-discovery function for law firms that strategically choose not to have an e-discovery function. Usually it's because they are small or mid-tier, and they've just made the decision not to invest in a technology or a person or a team in-house, whether that's because they don't have the volume of cases, or there's thousands of reasons that law firms choose to do that. And so we're seen as their sort of an extension of their team. We work in partnership, and, we're not sort of just instructed. We act as guides and supporters. So, I really do feel a relationship and a collaboration with my law firm clients. So going back to your question about inclusivity and who's involved, it really surprised me that when I joined on the service provider or vendor side, I would try to go along to these conferences or breakfasts or learning events that I had done for the last 10 years of my career with little barrier to entry and no effort. And all of a sudden, people were charging me, instead of $150 a ticket, they were charging me $2,000 a ticket because I worked for a service provider. And actually, my service provider, small business financially, was a lot our budget was a lot smaller than a large international law firm. And I just found it really difficult and there was even some events, George, where I was going purely to learn. I'm representing my lawyer clients. I'm their e-discovery professional. I was going to learn, to hear about the latest topics. And I've been told that I'm not allowed to attend because of the organization that I work for. And I just find it exceptionally frustrating. So yeah, with ACEDS in particular, although we're the Association of Certified E-Discovery Specialists, and we do encourage people from the e-discovery arena to come and learn, it is really open to everyone.
Now, there's a message in there.
Message.
Not at all veiled message in there to the organizations that do have that differential in pricing, right? Stop it.
Yeah, just think about the purpose of the people that are there. Think about what you're trying to do. I think that's my message, is that I understand there's commerciality around these conferences. It's a business. You're trying to earn money. I understand that you don't want a bunch of lawyers in a room trying to be sold to. But let's be honest, at those events, really the key purpose is education, knowledge sharing, raising the profile of people, sharing war stories. And if you can't do that to everyone, what's the point? Be more inclusive, one ticket price for everybody. Think about the purpose that the people are attending are going for and try to meet that purpose, not just label them based on the organization that they work at.
Shifting gears a little bit, for those people who are watching this and are interested in joining the ANZ chapter, what do they do?
Well, first of all, find me on LinkedIn, add me. We have a website. George, you put me on the spot. I believe it's anz.aceds.org. Go to our website. You can subscribe to membership. There's membership prices all up. Or you can email us at anz@aceds.org and just find out more. So myself, any of the board, if you go to my LinkedIn page, you can sort of find the links through there. The Australia New Zealand chapter has its own LinkedIn group. We're actually working in that group to try to make it a company page. We get a bit more functionality that way. So we'd love anyone to get in touch, whether you've got content that you want to share, whether you've got questions, information. Maybe we'll do something on ChatGPT coming up, hot topic at the moment. We do a lot of back to basics series as well, Forensics 101. So, if there's any topics that you want to see, that's probably the best way. Go to the website, ask, find me on LinkedIn, shoot us an email. The board at anz@aceds.org, you all get a copy of, we all get a copy of the email to respond to as appropriate. So,
How has the chapter been received?
I think pretty well so far. It's still growing. It's a small, I think the industry in Australia is quite small. And as I said, we've had great feedback. So we have pretty good attendance at our webinars, more than we sort of first expected. We get great feedback on the content. How's it been received generally? I think well. What we'd like to do more of is, what we find difficult is the in-person events, because as I said, Australia's geographically dispersed, a bit like the US, but we've got one chapter for the entire country. So we sort of have to figure out what's the best way to get our New Zealand folk on the ground. And then in New Zealand, there's the North and the South Island. And, I'm in Queensland, Sydney. So, anyone who hasn't been to Australia, to fly between Brisbane and Sydney, it's an hour and a half by plane. Sydney to Melbourne's another hour and a half by plane, and it's another 3 hours to get over to New Zealand. So although, we're a small country overall, I think by head count compared to, say, the UK, the distances are pretty great. So we're still trying to figure out how to do a lot more in-person networking. So if anyone's got any ideas, we'll probably do a series of breakfasts or drinks coming up towards the end of the year, and we might just do them regional, do a bit of hybrid sharing. But if anyone's got any ideas, reach out. But yeah, I think it's been quite well received so far.
You've got the ACEDS chapter. Are there other similar setups, whether there's a Women in E-Discovery chapter or anything else like that in Australia?
Yeah. So there's the ALSM, the Australian Litigation Support Managers Group, but again, that's a group that I think is quite limited to including law firm employees. We've got, there's no, I don't know about the ILTA conferences per se. I haven't seen much, but the International Legal Technology Association, there are members of the committee in Australia or the advisory board in Australia. So there's definitely the international bodies are there. In terms of a local women in e-discovery chapter, there currently is not. I'm hoping someone will start this up, and I'd like to be involved. I spoke to a bunch of women in Sydney late last year and was really trying to get the idea underway, because I know a lot of the board of Women in Discovery. I will be honest that it's not something that I think I should take on my plate at the moment. I'm trying to set up another group, but I'd love to be involved.
Might be a little full right now.
At the moment, yeah. But yeah, no, I just think the reason that I'm passionate about this stuff is that I want to raise the profile of e-discovery professionals within our industry. And sort of, I touched on it before, we're not just people who get instructions and press buttons in a certain order. We're not just technologists. The profession and the experience and the knowledge and confidence that it takes to be a really good e-discovery professional, we really should be treated as experts. So many lawyers already do. We're a trusted advisor. We're an expert. We know not only the data, but the words that humans use, which we need to try to understand to match technology with finding documents. We need to know the different technologies, how they perform, the limitations, what's best for a case. The work that goes into being an e-discovery professional is substantial. We need to understand the legal issues, the strategy, what the client's trying to achieve, the budgets. The technology sits behind all of that. And it is hard, but, once you know the technology, there's still all the people layer. Then we're training lawyers, which is one thing. And, just trying to meet deadlines. It's as a lawyer would instruct an expert. I've been to a few expert sessions at London International Disputes Week here, actually, since I've been here. And it's just impressive to see sort of the caliber of, professions that lawyers do call upon. And I just want our e-discovery people to be seen as the same, not just technology providers. So the more our community can provide a place to raise the profile of e-discovery professionals, like those in the Sky Discovery team, like those in the ACEDS community, I think the more we do that, the better. And that's why I thank you as well, George. The more you can talk to people in our global community and talk about what they do every day, what challenges they face, how they got to where they are, I think that's great inspiration for, all the other generations coming behind us. So that's what I'm, hoping to do more of.
Before we close, remind us again, what's the next thing you've got coming up with that chapter?
Oh, what is it? That's a good question. Oh, the next thing that we've got coming up is a session. I think Kat Casey from Reveal-Brainspace is, she's actually speaking at Lawfest in New Zealand, and she has gracefully offered to take that session as a virtual session after the in-person and deliver that to our Australian, New Zealand folk as a live webinar. Data-driven AI, I think it is, with Cat's brains and smarts. So that's our very next session. Thank you to you guys for everything you've done to organise that. And then hopefully down the chain, we'll do a few more bits on mobile data, teams and collaborations tools. There's so many topics at the moment, but the next one's by your colleague, Kat Casey, which I'm really looking forward to, actually. She delivers a great presentation.
Wonderful. Well, Emma, thanks for joining us today. Emma Young is Head of Consulting Delivery at Sky Discovery. I am George Socha. This has been eDiscovery Leaders Live, hosted by ACEDS and sponsored by Reveal. Emma, thanks again.
Thanks, George. Lovely to speak to you.
Likewise. Or